This episode of the Mad Rush podcast.
We're really good at what we do, some of us, but we're not mind readers. And we also are humans that have our own blind spots. And that's the thing to remember about therapists and that's the number one question also I think someone should really have on their mind when speaking to a therapist is, what kind of work do you do?
Welcome to the Mad Rush podcast. I'm Trisha Addicks, the original sorority rush consultant. While the stories I have to share are nothing short of astonishing, this podcast goes beyond the wild client tales and sorority life. I'll be engaging with fascinating guests from both within and outside the Greek world, uncovering the surprising connections that bind us all together. Join me for a journey that's as entertaining as it is enlightening. Welcome to Mad Rush. Y'all, I am so excited. My book, The Rush Bible, is available for pre-order from Simon & Schuster. It's coming out next May, but you can order it now, and it's going to be great for anyone who's considering going through sorority rush. This is the book for you. You can order it today. The link is in the show notes, and it's also on my Instagram at Rush with Confidence. And I can't wait to get this great information on how to crush sorority rush out to all of you. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I appreciate you. So in this episode, I'm pleased to have psychotherapist and post-traumatic growth expert, Dr. Victoria Grinman, about why real healing demands honesty, discomfort, and the courage to look inward, especially after trauma. So thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to get into it.
Oh, I'm so excited to be connected to you and doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. So who was it who originally connected us?
Gigi Robinson.
That's what I thought. Yes. I loved my episode with her. And I don't think it's come out yet, but she's really inspiring, and she had a lot of really good things to say, which is surprising that I remember, because I was telling someone I recorded with the other day, I'm such in this stage of my life and world that I am so busy and have so many things in my brain that the minute I finish recording, I forget what we talked about. So when I listen to the episode, it's so fun because I'm like, wait, that's such a good episode. and it's just because I don't remember anything. So tell me a little bit about your background, where you went to school, all the things.
Sure. I went to school at Adelphi University for my undergrad, and I moved on to Columbia for my master's. And after working a few years, I decided to go back for my PhD. And I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to research, but it was really important for me to dig a little bit deeper into what I was doing at the time. I've been in the field for about 2 decades, a little bit more. And I started off doing a lot of work with children, teenagers, parents. I worked in a school system for a very, very long time, kids with special needs and differences in abilities. And in my private practice, I've been in New York, Boston. Now I do still work with children and teens, but I'm really passionate about working with young adults, parents, couples. Relationships really fascinate me. So, and in addition to that, working with universities, academia has been a really big part of my life.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, huge. Teaching has been a really great time. And just the way that I do my private practice, I speak a lot, traveling, working with different agencies and organizations, working on sustainable practices for healthcare professionals. And I also have a mentorship where I support healthcare professionals like therapists, coaches, psychiatrists, people that are really trying to build their private practices to be sustainable and value-driven, because I find there to be a huge challenge in that in our industry, where people are building private practices or building their businesses, but not necessarily finding them to be sustainable or successful or really making them happy.
So can you explain a little bit more about that? What is it that you're actually doing? Meaning, I understood the words that you said, but I just was, so like, what do you do? Do you give them therapy or classes, or what do you do?
Let's start with just sharing that when people are in private practice, it's kind of like when I started my private practice back, I say back in the day because at the time I couldn't afford, let alone I wasn't connected to coaches or mentors to really support me in the business realm. And as a therapist, I had no idea what I was doing. I fell into a lot of holes. And I mean that because I literally thought I was walking on steady ground, but through the process of risk taking, fell through the floor. And a lot of the decisions I made in building my private practice, which then led me to not be happy because I wasn't working with the aligned patients that were really going to be supported by me. I was grappling at straws, trying to make ends meet. And I was trying to do what I thought was going to make me successful in helping other people, which was these programs and, all of these different things that are geared towards people that are trying to build their businesses. But as therapists, we're not taught how to be in business. In fact, it's very much stigmatized when you're in school. Many students are actually very hungry for me to come speak to them because they want to know, how do I help people while also having a business that can support my livelihood, my children, my family? Those are very important things. And sometimes they feel conflicting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Business and helping other people doesn't always feel very aligned. And so in my mentorship, it's a lot of mindset work. We slow down. So do I provide business coaching? Absolutely. So there's coaching around, how to actually create a business plan, finances, all those things related to, goals, all those things related to building a business. But also, what are the things and blind spots that get in the way of us actually saying yes to the things that are aligned? What are our values? How do you create sustainability all around, not just for the people you're supporting? Because the most important thing is that the people that are helping others are also being taken care of. I would never want to be across, my first question to my own therapist is, how are you doing? And not because, I'm, trying to flip the script and, be in her shoes, but I want to make sure that the physician or the therapist or the person that's in front of me is having an okay day. Because, if they're not feeling,
Yeah, if they're not in the headspace or feeling, then that I can imagine. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So do you still do private practice?
Oh, yeah. So I'm in my office right now. I see patients almost every day of the week. It looks a little bit different because of my travel schedule and things that I do in addition to that. But I see people in person and also virtually.
Oh, wow. That's cool. So talk to me about finding a therapist that is going to work for me. Like, I talked to a friend of mine yesterday, and she said she was having a session with a therapist who is very faith driven and Christian driven. And while she is a Christian, she's like, that, I feel like that's two separate things. I can know God is in my corner, but I also can be not healing from something specific that I need to have the tools to heal, while still trusting in my faith and God. But how do she's like, so it was a very frustrating session to me because he kept saying, just trust that God has you. And she's like, wait, no, I need actual tools. So it's obviously not the right therapist for her. But so how do you find that?
I can identify with your friend. I think that what he's, and I'm not in his head, but it's interesting to have faith that actually is a practice, especially when you've had experiences that have knocked your faith on its side. So how to actually practice having faith while processing the emotions and processing the things that whatever it is that your friend is going through, that's the practice in therapy, right? That's what we do. And so I can see the frustration if the faith-based spiritual aspect of things is the thing that the person falls on to really support others. And that's just to say it's not a bad therapist, but you have to find the aligned therapist for you. I think that it comes, and I wrote an ebook on this, and it's actually the most downloadable thing on my website.
Oh, wow.
When I look, because it's not just about finding someone that your insurance covers, or if you are able to work outside of network, which is a whole other conversation of private versus insurance based, right? And how you choose that, having the courage to ask the right questions and knowing that you're vetting someone, because that first consult call or that first appointment with someone, you're really getting a sense of what it's going to be like to work with this person. You want to make sure that the person's modalities are aligned with the needs that you have. So that means that you need to know what your needs are.
I was going to say, so that's the step right there, is knowing what your needs are.
Yes. And I think that a really good consult call where the therapist takes your call, makes the time, it's not between bathroom breaks in between their sessions, but like really takes their time, takes the consult call, speaks to you. If you're able to share what you're dealing with, and what the identifying challenge is, and, put it in their court, they should be able to share with you what their modalities are, how their modalities might address what's happening for you. And if they're not addressing what's happening for you and they're not the right therapist, to be able to say, I may not be aligned for you, but I have a referral that might be, or you should be looking for something like this. It's about asking the right questions and almost really practicing having the courage to do that without feeling shy or like you're doing something wrong or like you're intruding into someone's space. A lot of people don't want to ask a therapist the things I think a therapist should be asked.
So can you give me an example? First off, I want to say it's very synchronistic. I don't know if that's the right word with what I do. And again, don't have the education, don't have the background. I'm not trying to claim that I'm a therapist, but there's a lot of knowing what you want that goes into what we do. So, or what you need. So we work a lot with our clients on, okay, let's identify what it is you're looking for, what it is that is important to you. And then let's work on, how to get that or how to understand that. But I just feel like it's so important and bears repeating, having the courage to and or the back work to know what you need is really important. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing what your values are and what you're looking for. Like the person, we're really good at what we do, some of us, but we're not mind readers.
Right.
And we also are humans that have our own blind spots. And that's the thing to remember about therapists and that's the number one question also I think someone should really have on their mind when speaking to a therapist is, what kind of work do you do? Many clients who I've had, and I said, well, would you like to know how I take care of me, and things like, and they're like, oh, like, I am curious.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, yeah, because if I didn't have my own experience as client sitting in my office, or if I'm not dealing with the things that are coming up for me in my own life, and God knows it's a very complex, I have so many things like, in the air all the time. When I'm sitting in front of someone, all the biases and all of my blind spots and all of the things that are going on for me yesterday, today, upcoming are in that room with me. So if I'm not dealing with it myself, it gets all mixed up, and it's not the most. I think it's not the most ethical way to practice.
Right.
I think therapists need to have their own plan for support. So if a potential client asks me, with all due respect, I'd love to know, it's really important for me that when I'm with someone, are you doing your own work? Is it something that you do on an ongoing basis? Do you feel comfortable taking me on? I know that I'm calling and you say you have room. Do you have the capacity? Like that's an okay question to ask.
Right.
No one's ever told me that though. This is something that I think came out of my own support of others. Like when people call me, and I'm only one person. I don't have a group practice right now and don't want to. In fact, I'm happy, doing what I'm doing. But when I don't have space, I will coach people on how to vet others. And I never leave people without that support because I think they need it. People will just go, oh, thank goodness that you called me back. Do you have availability? Yes, I can afford you. Yeah, great. And like, that's kind of like going on a date with someone and vetting them after 2 dates and going like, all right, I'll marry you. Like it's not enough.
No, it's not. And it's a very good point. And I've never even thought about it. And when my same friend and I were talking yesterday, I was telling a story. I've been in therapy since I was 12. My mom was a psychologist and she really believed in it. And I've had some really bad fit therapists in my life. And I mean, obviously at 12, I wasn't asking any questions, but we were talking about one in particular. And this is just a story that we were talking about yesterday, and because we were talking about her experience with that faith-based guy. And I was talking about how I was in therapy for 4 years with this guy, this therapist, psychologist, yes, not psychiatrist. And soon after, that was during college, and soon after I graduated college, I reached out to him for something else, and he had zero recollection of who I was. Like, and I was like, it was such an integral part of my college life and, my growth in college and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden I was blindsided by this guy. And I don't even know if that has anything to do with his practices or how he practiced, but it was shocking to me that like I had spent 4 years literally on his couch, not really, I mean, in a chair, and then he was like, wait, now who are you? And it was very shortly after I quit working with him. And I was like, So anyway, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, was he the wrong guy for me or just like?
I don't know if based on that, it means he was the wrong guy for you. It seems like he was very supportive for you in those times. But I think what it speaks to, and again, I don't know the guy, right? But what it speaks to is we see so many people. And, I had someone reach out to me for records from the time that I had worked with her for, something that she was applying for. And for a moment, I thought, let me place, you almost have to think like name and face, but that doesn't mean that it was an insignificant client to me at the time. And this was about, 8 years ago in a different place and time in my life. But what I do think is that sometimes therapists, because of the structure of their business and the way they've set themselves up, prioritize taking on clients because they need that client to fill a caseload.
Right.
As opposed to, is this an aligned client for me? If not, how can I support this person on their way to finding someone that is? And realizing that generosity in time and energy in supporting someone on their way, whether it's you or someone else, it loves to just come back to you tenfold. But so many people are afraid that they will not get another client or that they're not going to, so they take, that client and then they end up, I don't want to use the word miserable, it's maybe a hyperbole, but really struggling because it may not be aligned. It may not be the kind of client that they know they can support. It becomes more of a hassle than anything else. And that's no way to provide that service because it gets in the way.
And that's really interesting because there's a big correlation with what I do in getting clients too. I mean, there does need to be a little bit of understanding or a lot of understanding before we accept a client that the client is open-minded, or at least, we can't read, like to your earlier point, we cannot read minds. And if it's important that we don't just randomly take clients for the money or for whatever, and we don't, but I can see back when I started my business, maybe that reminds me of someone I took and I didn't realize that she did not have the GPA to be in a sorority, which is a completely different scenario. But I took her because I needed clients, or not needed them, wanted them, whatever the word is. And then I was like, whoa, this is a problem because I can't support her. I cannot help her get her goal of being in a sorority because I did not do my homework and I did not know that she had a GPA that was way too low and that she was going to be disappointed. So that's kind of an interesting correlation, is that I feel like that initial call or that initial consult, to your point, is so important for both sides.
For both sides. I just had a workshop with therapists where that's exactly what I talked about, the art of a consult call. And it had nothing to do with marketing. A lot of people think it's like what you say and how you say it. And,
right.
And it's not. It's about connecting to the human being on the other side with the intention of supporting them, whether it's you or someone else. And it doesn't mean you have to become a case manager, and it doesn't mean that you have to spend hours on the phone. But I'll give you an example. I have a client that, I worked with who told me point blank, I was driving. So I remember where I was. I was driving from visiting my father home. So it's a good 35, 40 minutes. And I called this person back, and right off, we had a consult call. And then, he said, do you take insurance? I don't. I've never have. And I said, this is what it is. And I can't, that's not something I think I can do consistently. You know what? Let me tell you what, I'm going to give you some referrals. The moment that I park, I'm going to, email them to you. And then I'm going to now share with you, if you have an extra 10 minutes, I want to just share with you what you should ask for. I went through this with him it was on my ride. I could do it. I was alone, which never happens. And the next day he ended up emailing me asking to schedule a session with me. And it was an aligned, really someone I know I can help. I spent the time. And when he came in, I said, can I ask what made that difference for you? Because, and he said, because you spent the time and it meant to me that you cared.
Right.
And and how many people don't have the time to respond to people that call them, don't have the time to really spend, and it becomes this businessy, and it is a service. We have to understand it is a service and there are boundaries and there isn't what I call a value exchange, but we can't lose the human.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what, to the universities and these programs, to really back them up, it's important that whether it's social workers or psychologists or people in the medical field understand that they're getting into this to help people. But we also need to be supported in how to do that in a way that also aligns with our values and what our needs are in life. And I think that is where the sweet spot is. Like if we had a Venn diagram, it's helping people, helping yourself, and greater good, and like, how do you do that together?
Oh, wow,
and that,
yeah.
I think, is what creates a value-driven, sustainable practice or practices, right?
Right. Wow. So you mentioned a blind spot, like you were saying you're human and we have blind spots. What is the biggest internal blind spot you see? And if you don't have an answer for this, it's okay. But I was just curious, what's the biggest internal blind spot you see people bringing into therapy today? Or is there one?
There's just so many. And I think that anxiety, and I just finished saying this to someone that I was working with right before, speaking to you. Don't create stories and narratives about things that have not happened yet. There's this anxiety about
the
things that just have not occurred. And so much of it is our protection, trying to, make sure that we know what's about to happen and how we're going to respond to it right now. So presence is lacking, and the ability to really deal with what's going on over here rather than trying to control other people or what's going on out there. And I think that is a major one.
Yeah, I don't know if guilty of that but that's how I start thinking about what's possibly going to happen and start worrying about that. And then how I'm going to react to it when it hasn't happened, rather than sometimes dealing with what's going on right now. So yeah, I guess I could get a few more hours of my day and get some therapy, but I'm going to rely on that past stuff. So is there anything that you could say, and again, don't have to, for listeners, so how to help, let's say a mom is listening and her daughter is struggling or needs some help and the daughter's over 18. Is there something that a parent can do? I know that to ask to help support them.
Yeah, it's almost like you were this just happened yesterday. I see someone and the parent, they have someone in their family that also requires some support. So the parents, spoke to me yesterday, and the person's, over the age of 18, is no longer a minor, but could really use some support. She's a young adult in college, and the question was, how do you get her to go? How do you get her to do it? And I think everyone's different. In this particular case, I think that sometimes young adults have so much on their plate. Not sometimes. Young adults who are in college have so much on their plate. It's almost a given. There's a change. There's change socially, academically, responsibility-wise, anxiety. There's, you're going from being supported in different ways to maybe being more on your own, where you're finally getting that experience of, oh my gosh, I'm alone here. Like I'm by myself and I have to make decisions for myself. And I think that's a very overwhelming place to be sometimes, that a lot of young adults I work with yearn for the decision to be made for them. And at times I work with parents not to do that, but to help them problem solve on their own and learn that skill. But when it comes to therapy, especially if you have a child who is in college and is suffering and is sort of in their own downward spiral when things are not going well socially, with a boyfriend, with a girlfriend, with, sorority, or, something's going on, or academically. Sometimes letting them know gently, I love you, I care about you, and I'm noticing X, Y, and Z. I would like to make an appointment for you. I would like to help you find, here are some options. I'm going to vet them if that's okay with you, and go for 3 sessions to just talk to someone to see if this is the person or maybe someone else, and vet the person. For the parent listening, vet the person, call the therapist, let them know what's going on, and gain the permission from your child. I have found that a lot of college students will go fine, but inside, I think
they feel relief.
They feel so much relief because it's almost like the fine, mom. It's like the decision's been made for them. They have to go, so they have to talk to someone. But once they're in my room, I'm working with someone else. The mom, she'll never come in. I don't know what to do. She's pre-college. Before she goes to college, I need her to see someone because that's my ultimatum. She comes in, they sit down. I roll, doesn't even want to look at me. But by the end of the session, when can we schedule another one, mom?
Mm-hmm.
And, coming in and, we're building a relationship. And it's really about finding the right person.
Right.
Who understands where you're at, who won't be pushy, who's not, doesn't have their own agenda, who doesn't think they know better, because a lot of therapists disconnect is there, that they're just not meeting people where they're at. And so I think making decisions for them in that way.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I have 2 questions from that, and I'm going to forget them. So while you were talking, first off, let's say you have 3 sessions and you don't think it's the right fit. And I hope I know the answer to this, but is this something that a therapist takes personally? And so let's say I had 3 sessions with you and I just don't think it's the right fit. At that point, you've already had a connection, and you've made a connection, at least in my experience. When you spend 3 hours with someone, then it becomes something where you feel some sort of connection. Is that an awkward conversation?
I just happened to have that similar conversation with someone. So is it awkward? Sure. I think that it can be awkward I'm going to start with awkward for the client.
Right.
It's awkward for the client because they don't want to hurt your feelings. Well, generally speaking, they don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't know how to say it. They, are testing, how you're going to feel if they, bring it up. So I think it can be awkward. And for the therapist, we're human beings. So of all the therapists I've spoken to in my own experiences, there is a part of us that surely, feels that from in a personal place. But when that's happening, it's not personal, right?
Right.
Personal in the sense that you're bad as a therapist or you're not a good therapist. It just may not be a good fit for that client for many different reasons. That has nothing to do with your skill, how much you care,
right,
or anything like that. But I think the therapist has a lot to do with whether or not that conversation is successful.
That makes sense. That's also might be why it wouldn't be a good fit if the therapist is not able to, make that somewhat easier for. And the other thing that I was thinking when you were talking while listening to you was that I find a lot of times mom will reach out to us and say, I think my daughter is going to need some help figuring this out. She's got whatever it is going on, anxiety and or friend drama, whatever. And they say, well, I think my daughter's going to want to talk to you before we decide to sign up for your services. And I always say, no, she's not, because she's 18. She either thinks she knows it all, but I'm going somewhere with this, and or she does not want to be the one to decide who is going to be her rush consultant or whatever. But 100% of the time after, like, let's say the mom vets and decides that we're the one for her daughter, I get the eye roll. I get, especially if it hasn't come from them, I get the eye roll. I get the, resistance. And then all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I do need this help, or I do need, and it's a switch. Just like you said, was talking with, or texting with someone recently who had come to me after an unsuccessful rush, and I was working directly with her about, getting a continuous open bid, which is a bid after formal rush. And she was not answering my texts. And she was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that, whatever. And then once she started getting into it, she was hammer texting me like, oh, okay, what do I do now? What do I do now? What do I do now? And it's when that light bulb goes off, that light bulb moment happens, or when they think, oh, wait, shoot, I do need help. That's when I can really help, or when I can really move forward. But it's very similar with the mom calling saying, I see this, but the mom is also a mom and she's 40 or however old she is. And she sees it, but a lot of times at that age, they don't. And something about making that decision for them is also super valuable.
Because it sounds like, and it is in my experience, that just how do we make decisions? That's a very big question. Many books have been written about it, but decision making when it's emotion based in the midst of a spiral or a crisis because someone's broken up with them, or they can't make it all happen at once and they don't know the right thing to say. And, and they're spiraling, they're calling the parent because the parent is the one that they normally call when something's, and the parent, can't always be the one to put out those fires. And so the decision making is very emotional. I don't need it right now. I need to just tell you. And the parent's like, I can't do this all on my own. I can't listen to you and then not help you. I'm not there. You need some support. So I think making the decision for them and letting them know, if you don't find this helpful after, 3 sessions, that's, we can talk about it and we can see the next steps. I would not suggest saying you don't have to ever go again. I would say we'll discuss the next steps, right, of what might be supportive for you. But if the parent does have a good relationship with the child and, they're talking and they're in, because there are many different kinds of dynamics in life, child is okay with the parent kind of, supporting them in this way, I think it would be okay to support the child in making that appointment and maybe even scheduling it for them around, and just saying, I'll make those first steps easier for you. But I think it's really important you see them. And make sure to talk to the therapist so the therapist can say, yes, I think this is a line. This is what we can do, and work with the student to create those goals. And if it's not a good fit, to make an appropriate referral.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great advice and very important to hear. I also sometimes get a little blowback, that's helicopter parenting, but I don't think supporting your child in a way that is effective and can give them some tools to support, or to find the tools to support, I don't think that's helicopter parenting. And I think that is just my opinion. The role of a parent is, when your child needs it, to step in and help them in any way that's appropriate and that you can. So
the mom I spoke to yesterday said just that. She said, if my child, she said, I am a helicopter parent and I'm pretty intense. And I smiled because I know that, I'm like, yep. She said, but if my child was hurt physically and I knew that they were sick or ill, I would make them an appointment at the doctor and say, you're going. And that's what I just do. And this is one of those situations where I have this need. I want her to, step into the office, someone's office that, she just, and just have that opportunity to find out for herself. Because the truth is, sometimes people don't, if they don't have the opportunity, they won't know. And if the decision is made on an emotion of like, I'm in crisis right now, but I won't be on Saturday, when young adults don't always see is the trajectory of patterns.
Right.
Just because this crisis is averted doesn't mean that the same pattern is not going to come up in a different point in life. And
Right.
So the point of therapy is not to put out fires, although some therapists do treat it that way and kind of, and clients treat it that way. The point of therapy is to, yes, there's crisis intervention. Yes, there are moments where therapy is indicated when there's a crisis and you need it right, like acutely. But a lot of times it's a chronic pattern that's going on in your life that you need some support in having someone help you process and understand, who am I? How am I being in the world? What are my values? What do I want? And how is my behavior, how I'm being in the world, not aligned with what I'm doing, what I'm wanting? How is it what I'm doing is not aligned with what I'm wanting and what I'm seeing? And what are the patterns and of my humanness? And gently shifting and challenging yourself in different ways. And that's really the goal.
It is. So I'm sitting here thinking that my friend, so are you taking private clients now or what do you call them? Patients?
I have a bit of a wait list, but if they're aligned, and it really depends on the alignment, not just schedule, but if it's a good fit. And if not, then I have some really wonderful referrals.
Oh, good. So, and where do you practice?
In New York and Boston is where I am licensed. And then I do my mentorship all over the country.
Okay. So that's amazing. So tell me how people can find you.
Sure. You can go on victoriagrinman.com. It's my website. Whether you are a therapist, you can go through that mentorship door, or if you're a potential client, you can go through that psychotherapy door, and all the stuff is there for you. You can also find me on Instagram at Dr. Victoria Grinman is my handle, and you can email me. Someone will get back to you soon.
Yes, I love that. Just if you're listening, this will all be in the show notes too. So if you're driving, please don't write it down. I would rather you get where you're going safely, and then it'll be in the show notes when it airs. So thank you so much for being here. You really had some great, I don't know if advice is the right word. All of what you said was really great and pertinent. And I appreciate you spending the time, the intentional time with me and the people who are listening.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was a nice conversation.
It sure was. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Mad Rush Podcast. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. For additional Rush tips, updates, and more, please follow me on Instagram at Rush with Confidence. If you would like to reach out to us, or for more information, please email info@madrushpod.com. This podcast is produced by Collier Landry and Don't Touch My Radio. Copyright Trisha Addicks.